Yo, Chris from Nocturnal Customs, and welcome to part one of the Viper project. Using that term real loosely. So I'm out here in the garage. I'm making some progress with toolboxes and putting everything away, but still got a long ways to go. I got my Harbor Freight lights shining, doing pretty well. It's like daylight in here, and did some work on the Challenger. I did a few things on my friend's car, some parts over there in the corner from his C6 Vet. We just did headers and exhaust and a couple of other things to it. And been getting my cars just squared away. I mean, everything's been pretty good on them, but just little tweaks for the summer and fall season. But the topic today is the Viper project. And it's kind of funny that I could actually say I'm a Viper owner, although I think I get laughed at by most real Viper owners. But it's all right because I think this thing's gonna be a lot of fun. Let me show you guys what I'm working with here.
I'm not a fool, Plissken.
Call me Snake.
So this is a 2000 Dodge Viper RT10. Well, most of it's a 2000. Some of it might be from a different year, but there's a lot of parts from a lot of different cars on it. The story behind this car is my friend has a body shop, and he had this car sitting on a rack probably since the early 2000s. He needed rockers off of it, and back then they were pretty hard to come by, so he bought this car with some major front end damage and harvested the rockers off. So he had this car sitting with no wheels, no tires. It was just up about 5 feet up in the air on a steel rack, and none of these body parts were on it. It was pretty much just a chassis and a tub. And I look up one day and I'm trying to figure out what kind of car it is, and I asked him and he said it's a Viper. So I thought, oh, that's cool. It's probably something that he would never sell, or you'd never really be able to fix up. Fast forward a long time later, and I'm looking for a road race car. I'd like to build something cheap, maybe from like a C4 Vet. So I'm just cruising Marketplace and I come across that car up on the rack, and I recognize it and I can see it's his shop. So I go down there and I talk to him, and he's trying to part it out and sell it for all the little parts that are still left. And I ask him, would he take a little less than 2,000 for the whole car? And he kind of thinks about it. He calls me a couple of days later and he says, you sure if you could take it now and get wheels for it to roll it out, then we could get it on a trailer and get out of here. So that's what I did. And he ended up having a lot of other parts from other Vipers sitting around. So he gave me as much as he could, and that's how I put together most of this body. Well, it's not really put together yet, but at least it's mostly complete as far as having all the body panels I need goes. So you can see the car is all there. Its chassis, suspension is complete. The brakes were all there. I just had to take the calipers off because I bought these wheels and tires from Marketplace for $100. They're from a Durango. They have the same 6-bolt pattern, but they wouldn't fit over the Viper calipers. So I took the calipers off. I got them in the trunk, but everything was complete. It's just been sitting for a really long time. And I think he was saying this car had something like less than 500 miles when it was wrecked. I mean, it's been sitting for many, many years, but if I could see that odometer, it says 309, if we could believe that. But I mean, everything does look pretty new as far as, I mean, other than surface rust and everything else, but looking at things that would normally be worn don't appear to be worn. But the issue is up front here.
Fox. Sad story. You gotta smoke.
This car has some pretty significant chassis damage up in the front end. So as I was saying before, you can see the suspension, everything looks like it's, other than surface rust from being outside in Northeast, you could tell this car really wasn't driven too much before it was wrecked, but you could see how gnarly this rail is right here. and this lower section just accordioned in. So basically what I'm working with here, I'm gonna put some still shots up. There's buckling behind the suspension points, obviously damage in front of the suspension points. It doesn't appear to be compromised between the suspension points. So that means the chassis probably just folded up like this, and that caused the buckling towards the rear. And then you can see all the way back into there, there's like an upper brace that goes to the like the tub and into the front rails. Those are all buckled because everything, again, bent upwards and backwards. And it's a little bit on both sides. So it's mostly this side is the worst, but this side also has some buckling behind the suspension points and in front, but very minimal. So I think what we're gonna do is put this on the chassis table, put a laser tram on it, pull everything square, and then he gave me a cut off section of driver's side frame rail from the firewall forward. So once I fix the buckling, I could graft that in once we know everything's square. And I'll weld that up, weld it in. And then for the passenger side, I'm probably just going to plate the buckled areas, reinforce it, and it should end up being stronger than it would have been stock. The only real issue I'm worried about is the steering rack, because the steering rack mounts are fairly thin, and it looks like one may have been bent back a little bit. And I don't know if we're gonna be able to find the dimensions to run that through the tram, the laser tram, and I don't know if there's gonna be much of a way to square that up without just doing it the old-fashioned way, taking lots of measurements, probably putting it on the alignment rack. Fortunately, it's a very easy thing to pull that out if it is bent, and it'll be very easy to reinforce it back, but it's just getting that straight and square might be a little more difficult than some of the other problems. Yeah, I think I have every body panel now that I need for the car, and I've only spent, I think, about $700 so far to get the rest of the stuff that I needed. So this door he gave me, that my friend gave me with the car, this might have been one of the original doors from the car. It has a little bit of damage, but I could fix that easily. Has the stanchion. This door I got for $480 shipped. It doesn't have the stanchion, doesn't have a window regulator, but it does have the hinge. So they go for a little bit of money, and it wasn't supposed to come with the hinge, but it did. This bumper I got for $200. I had to drive 4 hours to get it, but really cool guy sold it to me for $200. It's got some cracking in the back, but the plastic welders should take care of that pretty easily. And I got these rockers, which these were actually the reason why my friend bought this wrecked car to begin with, was to harvest the rockers off of it to put on the car that these rockers came off of back in the early 2000s. So these are a little bit damaged. You can see there's some damage to them. And he just took the ones off of the other car, swapped them, and then had these sitting around. So I think one of them's actually, one of them might be the rocker from this car, and the red one might be the one that he replaced, but whatever. I could bang that out easily, stick it on. So at this point, I got all the body panels I need to put the car fully back together and make it actually look like a Viper. All right, so now that you've seen the car, the next question probably is, what do you plan to do with it? So as I mentioned before, I found this kind of looking for a road race project car. So the original plan for this car was to make it a all-out race car, nothing that was going to be street driven. But the more I started looking at the car, the more I'm really liking the car. And I feel like I am gonna wanna drive this thing on the street, and I might wanna be cruising it. It's the first time I'd ever owned a convertible car, a Target Top, or anything like that. So it would be cool to have a roadster to actually drive. But I'm still sticking to, first and foremost, making this something that would be fun and formidable on a road course. If I can make it streetable and clean it up enough where I'm not embarrassed to drive it on the street and it's not gonna fall apart, then I'm all for it. So I'm not gonna hamper its ability to street drive, but at the same time, I do wanna make it mainly a race car, because that's easier and cheaper than trying to put all the amenities in it and everything else. Not that those cars had much to begin with. But let me show you guys the plan as far as drivetrain goes, because as you know, the V10s are extremely expensive, and it's probably not going to be something that I could swing putting in this car. So here are my two options that I've come down to so far. Again, the V10, I would love one, but from what I've seen, they're going for 7, 8,000 for ones that might be toasted, bearing damage, whatever, knock. And if you need to rebuild it, it's going to be a fortune. So it just doesn't seem like it's going to fit the needs of this build. I really want to do an 8 in this, not because I don't like the V10, but just because this is going to be significantly cheaper. And this was never something that I intended to be dumping a lot of money into, nor do I have the money to dump into it. So looking at these options, I've done LS swaps, I've done Hemi swaps. So I kind of know my way around both of them. And obviously the prices I have here are not total prices at all, and they're just guesstimates of what you could find in the market these days. I'm sure I could find stuff for cheaper. There's obviously a ton of stuff missing here that could add up a lot for one side or the other, but just a general estimate. We got an L92, which is an aluminum LS. It's basically like a poor man's LS3. 6.2 liter, very good top end flow, just a great motor, very lightweight. And on the other side, we have the 6.4 Hemi, which is a beast of a motor for a naturally aspirated V8. They're pretty awesome. I like Hemis, they're fun, and it's Mopar. So let's go over the pros and cons. The obvious pros of an LS motor, and I didn't even list this one, is that as far as swap goes, they're smaller, they're more compact, there's way more parts out there. I do have that part availability. When you're looking for oil pans, headers, whatever, there's a ton of stuff out there for it. It's definitely a easier motor to get into any car because of the size, because of the aftermarket, and it's also, because this one's aluminum, it's very light. I think when I weighed these before, I think I had about 400 pounds when we had one at my old shop, fully dressed. That was an LS3, but fully dressed LS3, 400 pounds dry. I think a Viper motor V10 is close to 700 for the earlier gen V10s. So you're talking about a significant weight savings off the front of the car. If I'm gonna lose the torque of the V10, at least I'm gaining some weight savings off the nose. The other pros of the LS is cost, because obviously these L92s, I've seen them for $1,500. You could probably get them for cheaper in running condition right out of a truck. Parts are cheaper for them. Top end kit, like a BTR top end kit, runs around $1,000, maybe less. Everything's a little bit more expensive for the Mopar. For the 6.4 Hemi, the pros are really just that it's a Mopar, unfortunately. Well, I'll say one more pro, but as far as the motor itself, it's heavier. It makes a little more power than an L92 would with a good top end kit, something like an FRP top end kit. They'll make close to 500 wheel. I think either one of these, I could probably make 500 wheel on the 85 if I really crank it and get the tune right. But other pros of the Mopar, they're great motors, don't get me wrong, but it's bigger, it's wider. Those monster heads, you have over and under header bolts, which make it a little bit harder to get to the headers, and it's going to be harder to find headers that fit or build headers that fit. It's obviously much, much heavier. The 6.4 iron is a very heavy motor. It's even heavier than an LS iron motor and iron block motor. It's just a heavy motor. So I don't think I'll be seeing much in terms of weight advantage if I ran the V8 Hemi versus the V10, but it is cool. The main pro of the 6.4 is that they come with the 8 HP, and that price, $6,000, I've seen for 6.4 scat packs with a transmission, 8 HP 70. And what I like about that is if I want to run an 8 HP with this setup, then as far as I know from the last I've researched this, from when I was doing the blue car, the only 8 HP setup that I was looking at, there might be more now, was Sound German Engineering, and that's what I'm running in this. And it works absolutely flawlessly with the Mopar ECU. So it communicates with the ECU. There's some things that don't communicate, like trans temp, but for the most part, it communicates with the ECU. You tune it via CAN bus through HP tuners the same way you tune a factory Mopar, and you retain things like torque management. When you're using that Sound German setup with a GM ECU, it's still a standalone transmission controller that will work, and it'll take some data from the ECU to run it, but it's not going to be able to run torque management unless something has changed. Russell Drake, he runs Sound Engineering. I'll probably talk to him again before I start all this. But as far as I know, last I heard, you wouldn't have torque management. Next thing to decide is the transmission. So I always thought if I was going to build a road race car, I was going to be going with a manual transmission, because both my cars now are autos. I got the Challenger, which is auto. I got the Impala, which is auto. So I like drag racing. That's usually what I do with both these cars, although the Impala, I have run road course with it, but mainly I do drag racing, and the autos are great for that. But I figured this was probably my opportunity to maybe get a manual transmission in one of my cars and have some fun with it. Unfortunately, that seems to be something that may not be worth it, because I'm not a diehard manual guy, and it looks like it's going to be a little bit harder to get into the car. Reason being, if I go with an 8, it's not going to be sitting in the same place as the 10. One of the advantages of going with a V8 is I can maybe place it back further into the engine bay to reduce the weight bias a little bit, bring the engine more towards the center. So if you do that, now you're moving the transmission back. Now you're going to need a lot of tunnel modifications to get the shifter in. And it's just a lot more hassle installing a manual into a swap car than it is doing an auto, especially an auto like an 8 HP with an electronic shifter. So you just put that wherever you need it, and everything is wired. It's not no linkage, no mechanical stuff that needs to be, fit and run, clutch fork and all that stuff. So I think I'm leaning towards the auto. The other thing about the auto, specifically the 8 HP, is that it's not a disadvantage on a road course. So the reason why I always felt, I'm a very function over form guy, but the reason I always liked manuals and road race cars is because you have the ability to downshift, trans temps stay lower, you don't have automatic trans fluid that's overheating. It seems to live a lot nicer on a road course, and you have more control over your engine braking, your downshifting, your gear selection. But that all kind of changed with some of these late model 8 speeds. So in the past, some of the 4 speeds are a little bit rough on a road course. Some of the GM6 speeds even, I'm not really a fan of their shift characteristics. Even when you have a good tuner that could set them up, they're still kind of hunty and don't really want to go where you want them to be. The 8 HP, in my experience, has been phenomenal. It's always where you want it. It downshifts crisp, fast. It holds the gears you want it to hold. When I switch the Challenger into track mode or sport mode, which is another advantage of that Sound German setup, you could retain that. You just have to run some wires as toggle switches from a pin out in the ECU and turn it on in the TCS software, TCM 2800. But that's like when you put it in sport and track, it's great. It engine brakes, it holds gears. It just feels awesome. It doesn't feel like it's ever not where you want it. If I did go 8 HP, I would need to run some kind of an adapter, which is this 1500 probably for an adapter plate and everything I need to bolt that behind, mate it to an L92. And then I'd also have to figure out what kind of controller I'm gonna run and if I could retain some of those things like torque management, track mode, sport mode, and hopefully everything would work seamlessly. And then when you add that up, the 1500 for the adapter, you're starting to get close to the point of the 6.4. So I don't know if the cost is actually as much of an advantage as I thought.
I know who you are, but I heard you were dead.
I am.
So now that you guys got the gist of what I'm trying to do with this car, I'd love to hear in the comments of what you guys think about the drivetrain, the transmission, if there's any suggestions that you guys have, anything else maybe in like the LS family that you think would be good. I'd love to hear the manual versus auto debate. I just love to hear everything because I'm still open to suggestions on what to do and what would be cool. Before anybody mentions it, no, I'm not going to go with the 2JZ. I'm not going to go with an SR20 DET. I'm just too redneck to go with that kind of stuff. It needs to be a V8. And I'm not trying to do something exotic either that's going to be more of a pain than trying to do the Viper motor. I know guys have suggested like the Iron V10 from the Rams, but it's just kind of a dud of a motor. And I don't really feel like working with something where there's not a lot of aftermarket or parts. So I'm trying to look for something common, easy, cheap that will go into this and just be fun to race and not have to worry about blowing something up that's hard to come by or building a whole bunch of custom exotic parts to make something work. But let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'd love to hear it.